Money, that's what we're talking about today. Hi, this is Frank Buck, and this is the place to be if you want to get organized and make it look easy. I have a guest for you today. Skyler Fleming is the host of the podcast Money Talk with Skyler Fleming. He and I met when I was a guest on his podcast, and I'm going to put a link to that interview in the body of the blog post. You know, time and money are two things that nobody has enough of. Skylar talks about money. I talk about time, and I think the two are a perfect match. And so today I'm returning the favor of being on his podcast with him being on mine. I hope that you'll enjoy this interview, and I hope that afterwards you'll feel like we both did you a favor. Maybe you're going to take away one particular idea that you can implement, and perhaps the interview will just motivate you to take a look at your own system and clean it up a little bit so that you get every benefit from every dollar that you can. It's time to put your money to work for you. So enjoy this interview with Skyler Fleming. Well, Skyler, welcome. I'm so glad to have you on my show. You had me on yours. Glad to have you here.
Yeah, I love doing this sort of thing where we both get to talk about our different perspectives on each other's show. It's pretty fun.
Yeah. Yeah, we're recording this right at the end of January. So I know just several weeks ago, everybody had this New Year's resolution. They were going to get organized. So there's
Yeah.
my area. They're going to handle their money better this year. There's your area. They're going to lose weight. That's the third thing. So here,
Yes.
as people are watching it in 1st of March, and they've pretty well given up on all three of those. Uh, we can help them with two of them. I don't know about the losing weight, but we can help them get organized and do a little bit better with their money, hopefully.
Yeah.
So I was kind of wondering after your interview with me when I was on your show,
Mhm.
I'm kind of interested. What sparked your interest in sort of money as this sort of hobby or interest that eventually actually led you to do a podcast?
Yeah, that's a fun story to recount. I started working, I believe, probably 2018 or something like that at a credit union, just in a call center, just a pretty run-of-the-mill customer service job. And I realized that I had a huge interest in finance. I was learning so many things that I had never been taught from kind of helping people out with their situation. I worked my way up in that position to a tier two supervisor. So I was taking the really angry calls that required like weeks of working with people to kind of work through these crazy situations. And I just found myself kind of unsure about my own money. So I saw all these situations that these other people got in and said, well, I want to avoid that. How do I avoid a credit
Mhm.
card interest? And then I'd learn about, oh, you don't actually have to pay debt on a credit card in order to build your credit score. Things like that, where I would just see these specific situations play out in my time at the credit union, or I'd help someone through a troubling situation and thankfully maybe be able to rebate some fees. And most people don't know you can just call your credit union and they'll probably give you some money back. So there was so many things that I learned just
Really?
firsthand. Yeah.
Whoa. Okay. Well, I just learned something. Can you, well, of course, without mentioning any names, can you share maybe a situation to some of those mad phone calls? What were people
Mm-hmm.
hot about when they called you?
Yeah, it was almost always debt, and that kind of helped me build up that natural fear of debt that I think is good to have. Debt can be a good tool. I don't want to stay completely away from it, but there were so many. There's one that I was actually thinking about earlier today, where this person called in just irate about their truck loan, and they said every time I look at this truck, I just get angry because of the situation they found themselves in, being delinquent on it, and I don't recount the story completely to know who's at what fault, but the kind of things like that where you're just like mad at your life because you have debt on a
Mm.
asset that you're trying to own. I think those sort of things, those were most common stories. It was always someone is late, they need help, and just the idea that you're a slave to your debt is absolutely true.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you seen it change over time? Does the problem seem to be getting worse,
Hmm.
or is it staying pretty constant?
I feel like the COVID pandemic kind of put everybody just through such a tight grip on their money that they realized we need to do something about it. It feels like things are moving a little bit more in the right direction, that people realize they need to be saving in their 401ks or retirement accounts, or at least just saving in a savings account. is at least what people need to do to get started. It feels like things are heading in the right direction because inflation and all the other factors that everybody's so well aware of over the last several years has kind of forced people to say, wow, yeah, I actually gotta do something there. It's not like it was previously where the stock market just keeps going up and people are retiring left and right because their portfolios went up. Like we have to do some actual planning and maybe some penny pinching here and there to save some money. But I do feel like things are heading in the right direction versus how they were, especially at the beginning of the pandemic where everyone was in a panic. They don't want to be caught flat footed like that again.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And
Mhm.
that certainly caught us all. I'm kind of wondering, if we went back and we kind of saw Skyler as a child, were you the kid with, with the lemonade stand and the
Yeah.
newspaper route? It was always,
Not really, which is when you say that, I was like, wow, yeah, I wasn't really the person I wasn't selling all the trading cards to my friends in school or running the lemonade stand. I think I honestly didn't care too much about money, but I was soaking in lessons from my parents. I wasn't like going out trying to make money. It wasn't like on the forefront of my mind. And I guess I should consider myself lucky that I was in a situation where maybe money wasn't the most pressing thing on my mind. But my parents weren't fantastic with money by any means. So I think that allowed me to absorb a lot of those similar things at the credit union, where I would see these stories of people going through hardship with money. I would see my parents maybe struggling with money a little bit here and there. And that just helped build up that saver mentality in me of I don't want to find
hmm
myself in a position like that. My parents went through a bankruptcy when I was a little kid. So I don't remember a
Wow.
ton about it, but all I knew is we weren't at the house we were at anymore and we were living with my grandparents. So things like that, I think really built up the saver mentality in me.
And so as you grew up, of course, you're still a relatively young man, but
Mhm.
as you look back, are there some decisions that you made about money that now you're going,
Mm.
I sure am glad I did that?
Yeah, I would say some of the main things for me is just saving money, honestly. Like I remember I was interested in investing at a very early age where I was kind of getting caught up in the hype of stock picking and things like that versus how I invest now in index funds. But I think without learning that or like kind of learning that initial road, it wouldn't even have sparked my interest because I think so many of those stock picking people were talking about, oh, you can make such big money if you trade right, if you do day trading, stuff like that. Kind of just piqued my interest of like, oh, money can make money and things like that with investing. So I think just even getting started with some dumb investments that I did out the front where I was doing stuff that most people don't need to even bother doing, but I was doing it with like $100, which was not even worth it. Like there wasn't enough return there, but that kind of helped just introduce me to other content creators, things like that, where I was able to learn a little bit more. So just getting something in the door with investing, what I would say is that main number one decision.
Yeah, sounds great. And I know, my audience tends to be, mid 30, 40, somewhere
Mhm.
around in there, where, we've got family, we're raising a family. We want to teach financial responsibility. Maybe we've got a child that's about to go to college. I know with nieces and nephews, when mine got to about college age, I mean, every day in the mail, here was this, hey, credit card this,
Mhm.
apply for that. For a young person who's trying to establish a credit history,
Mhm.
they don't have a credit card yet. They don't have any credit history. What's a good place to start? What's square one for them?
For people to get started with their credit history, I think the main thing is a secured credit card. What that is you put up some of your own money to back that credit card balance, and that can help kind of ease the fear of, what if I get in credit card debt? I don't know how to pay it off or something like that because you're pledging your own money to back that credit line. So you're never going to find yourself in a position where you're delinquent because the bank or credit union can use that money to pay it off. But the main thing to do is once you get that credit card started is do not pay any interest on it. Like I said at the beginning, you don't have to pay interest on a credit card to build your credit score or things like that. Watch for this number called the statement balance. So each time the
Okay.
statement generates each month, there's going to be your new statement balance on there. That's the amount you need to pay off by the due date to avoid interest. And that's one thing that most people didn't know. The credit union that I worked at had that number listed as amount to avoid interest. So it couldn't be more plain. Like you pay this amount, you don't have to worry about interest. And when I would show that to people, they'd be like, I didn't even know that was an option. You do not have to carry a credit card balance in order to improve your credit score. So get that secured credit card. only put a couple charges on it if you're worried, because even just beginning to build that little bit of credit history is going to help so much when it comes to getting any amount of a credit score started. And then you can
Mhm.
begin to feel comfortable with, oh, I'm only putting my gas and groceries on there, some necessities. I'm able to pay it off each month. What other purchases am I able to put on there that I can know for sure I'm able to pay off? And that can also be a bit of a scary thing. Like my wife and I think one of our credit cards has like a $12,000 limit. We're never going to use that big of a credit limit. And honestly, it's kind of unnecessary for it to be there, but they want you to get in debt. That's how credit cards work. But we completely ignore
Yeah.
that. We put our expenses on there, we budget, making sure that we know how much we have available to spend. That way, when we're spending, we know we're not going to go over that limit because we're staying within a budget that's completely separate from that credit card limit. We kind of ignore it. So I
Mhm.
think the main thing to get started, try a secured credit card and make sure you're paying it off each and every month so you're avoiding interest.
Yeah, yeah. I know when I was, in college and then starting out in my career, it was a long time before I ever had a credit card. I did everything with cash and checks because I heard, interest. You have a credit card, well, you're going to have to pay interest. And it was a long time before
Hmm.
somebody said, well, no, when you get your statement, if you pay it off, just pay the balance, at the end of each
Hmm.
month. No, you're not having to pay anything, and you kind of get these perks. Um, Along the way. So it doesn't have to be a bad thing. You
Yeah,
just got to pay it off, so that you're
just
not
pay it
paying
off.
that
And
interest.
I've
Yeah.
never, I'm kind of proud of this one. I've never paid a penny in credit card interest. I'm thankful to be in a position where I don't have to carry credit card debt, because certainly there are times where maybe everything hits the fan and you need that little bit of a reserve. But
Mhm.
I almost want to make myself a little plaque or something to put behind me in my podcast that says never paid credit card interest, because it's a really nice thing. Because like you said, there's rewards and other benefits that come as you begin to use credit cards well.
Yeah, absolutely. And if something happens, and that refrigerator goes out and you've got to buy a new refrigerator today and you're 22 years old and you don't have a lot in the bank. Well, yeah, you can go ahead, you can have the new refrigerator. Yeah, okay, so we're going
Hmm.
to pay a little interest. We're going to pay it off as quickly as we can. But day to day, we're paying it off every month. And kind of sticking with that theme of that young person, I've heard don't ever cancel that first credit card
Hmm.
because that kind of establishes your beginning. And the longer your credit history, the better off you are. Is that
Yes.
sound advice?
Yeah, that is true. I have my very first credit card was with that credit union that I used to work for, and we don't really bank with them anymore. And I would probably
Mhm.
leave them and just close all the accounts, but we have that credit card there that contributes towards your average credit history. That's what creditors look for. If you have a longer credit history, they know you know how to handle debt and things like that. And so letting that one stay open increases that average. Where if I were to close it, it would cut it down significantly, because most people, when they open that first credit card, they only have that one credit card for several years. So if you're suddenly taking a 10-year average and removing that card that you've had for 15, 16 years, suddenly that average comes down to like 5 or 6. So it's just worth it to just keep it open. I have a system set up in my like reminders, like we were talking about on
Yeah.
my show, to make sure I use that credit card just once every 6 months so that they don't close it out of inactivity or something like that. So set up
Mm.
simple reminders to say use this one card and then you pay it off when you get it. Honestly, you could pay it off, just schedule a payment for a month from that purchase. That way, you're paying off the statement balance, because that's all that's on there. So yeah, I would definitely tell people, don't close that first credit card you ever open.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds great. Um, credit score, I'm sure you know yours. I
Mhm.
know mine. For that person who's going, credit score? I have no idea.
Yeah.
How would they know?
Yeah, there's a lot of great tools out there. I would just go to the credit bureau's websites and sign up for an account. They'll show you your credit score. There's a wonderful tool called, I think it's freeannualcreditreport.com or something like that, or like free credit report, that you can get them, I think, weekly since the pandemic. It can show you your credit report. And I would be more concerned about your credit report than your credit score, making sure that everything is factual on there, because there was a handful of those supervisor calls that I took where something got reported slightly incorrectly and it tanked their credit score. And those places can fix that sort of stuff. You just have to dispute it. So if you're unaware of it, set some sort of reminder. I check mine quarterly just to make sure that the credit report doesn't have any information that it shouldn't have on there. But if you're unsure, all these websites and different things, they offer free ways to view your credit report and credit score. I know there's one, I can't remember which website it is, But every time I log in to look at that credit report, it prompts me with a pay now screen. And you don't have to pay for anything. They're just trying to get money out of me with one of those silly subscriptions like we talked about on my show. But
Yeah.
you can check all that sort of stuff for free just right on their website.
Sounds great. Um, yeah, so you mentioned, putting things on your reminders, which kind of
Hmm.
helps automate the process so that you're not having to remember all this stuff.
Hmm.
You think about it once, you put it in the system, work the system. Tell us about maybe some other automations that you have in your financial world that help you.
Yeah. I've covered automation a couple times on my podcast. One of the main ones that's often overlooked is direct deposit. If you're still depositing a check every week into your bank account or every 2 weeks or whatever, get past that. Your bank or your credit union certainly accepts deposits, and your work likely offers direct deposits. And the reason they're so powerful is you can automate that savings factor. Like you can write 10% to savings, 80% to my checking, or however you want to do it. And it's such a simple way to automate that, because if you're so used to all of your paycheck, you just deposit it right into checking, then you spend all of it. Just limit that amount in your checking.
Hmm?
And it's more often than not, you're going to find that you don't end up spending more than that. So if you set up an account that only 70% of your paycheck is going to checking, then you're suddenly cutting your spending down, because most people I've found, they just spend because the money's there. And which is unfortunate. And some simple tracking and budgeting can really help people overcome that, but so can some simple automations and just setting up your accounts in a way to actually benefit you.
Yeah, yeah. I know on my show we talked about how I keep up with, or rather on your show when I was a guest on
Mhm.
your show, we talked about the little uh, how I keep up with my subscription so that
Mhm.
things aren't just sort of being sucked out of my account every month that I didn't even know that I had. How do you handle those sort of things? The recurring subscriptions, the auto
Mhm.
renew kind of things?
Yeah, I get rid of most of them in my life, honestly. Like I have pretty much cut most of my subscriptions to really only purchase them when I absolutely need them. So like if it's a monthly thing, I'm canceling it right after, because if I paid for 1 month, they're going to give me that 1 month access. So I'm canceling it right after. So maybe that's a little bit more tedious, but I love the idea that you shared of a calendar or a reminder system. And if I do know I'm going to need the subscription for a couple months, I will immediately set a reminder to just check on it when I know I'm going to consider canceling it. So right after you purchase it, that's when you got to put that information into your system, or else you're going to miss it when it does come up. So I like to really cut down on, sorry if my camera's lagging there, but I like to really cut down on my subscriptions and keep them as minimal as possible. The one way that I do usually save for subscriptions is I always try to purchase them annually, because you can break it down with a budget. And I call this sinking funds. You can break it down with a budget to be a monthly savings versus an annual savings. So this is a great tip for car registration, Christmas gifts, any of those things that come up yearly. Break it down into a monthly subscription to yourself in terms of savings within your budget, just by writing down those numbers where you say, I got this much income this month. 10 of that's going towards car registrations that come up in a year. 50 a month is going towards Christmas that comes up the same time every year, yet people are surprised by it. So like just kind of turning things into subscriptions is more of how I do it, but just setting those reminders right away if I do have something that's going to charge me monthly.
Absolutely. And that way you don't have to remember it. Your
Hmm.
system's going to work for you. Of course, I know you've had a lot of guests on your show.
Hmm.
Um, what are some of the more memorable tips or strategies or guests that you've had that you think our audience would
Yeah.
benefit from?
The number one tip that I get on my podcast all the time when I ask people what's something you wish you would have known sooner, done sooner, is getting the company match and getting compound interest started for people within their 401k. And for those who don't know it, your 401k company match, your company likely offers you some sort of percentage based, we'll match 3% up to 6%, things like that. That's free money they're giving you. I was looking in my 401k the other day, and I have only put about half of what is actually in there because of compound interest and growth, and my employer match makes up the other half. So it's like you're telling me I have 100% return on my money because of just some regular stock market growth, but also combined with the company match that they're giving me more money that's also growing. That's my number one tip that I hear so often from people. And when I looked at that, I was like, yeah, obviously this is a no-brainer to make sure to get. So I encourage people to just at least start with that company match to make sure you're getting that amount in your 401k, because that's going to just be like rocket fuel for your retirement. If you could, especially if you can start that out at a young age, but no matter your age, if you've never gotten the company match before, the best time to start is today. That's kind of the number one thing. And I have a couple other ones as well, if you'd like to hear those.
Absolutely.
Yeah. A couple other ones. Automation, of course, is a main one that I bring up often. And people will naturally bring that one up without realizing they're talking about automation. They'll talk about making sure your investments are automated, things like that. And they don't realize how much automation actually plays a role in all of our finances. Another one that I get as a common tip is simple investing. This is one where it can help people stay calm with their investments, keep a simple portfolio that you don't have to stress over. Like I said, I started with stock picking with $30 to $100 or whatever, and I never got it quite right, probably lost money, but now I'm just shoveling all my money into index funds. That's the best place to start, is things like the S&P 500, because that's
Mhm.
what everyone is comparing themselves to. So why bother trying to be this genius that figures out how the stock market works in order to make money when you can just keep up with it and worry about the rest of your life? Like, so many people, like, I love finance. So stock picking would be something that you think I would be interested in because I like money. I like learning about it. I want to teach people about money. So you think I would know how to do this, but I don't. And it's something I don't bother with because there's so many other areas in my life that I'd rather spend time. So if you're kind of tired of investing and trying to pick out the right stocks, you just find it. I think VOO or VTI, those are some of the common tickers of
Mhm.
the index funds, whether it's a total market fund or an S&P 500 fund, and just shovel your money in those, and you're going to be just fine, because the saying goes that it's better to uh, be the market instead of trying to beat the market. So you just keep up with that standard, and you're going to be just fine. Because I tell all my friends, if my S&P 500 index fund goes to zero, we got a lot bigger problems than what am I going to do if it goes to zero? Because that's the 500 biggest companies in the world. If
That's
they all go
right.
to
Yeah.
zero, I think there's other problems going on. But just keep it
Yeah.
simple when it comes to investing.
Yeah. Now, would you recommend going and having a broker?
No, I think most people can do it themselves. Honestly, like
Okay.
there's financial planners that can certainly help people when it comes to actually getting near retirement and things like that. But I think most people can open up either their IRA or 401k that they have with their work or with Fidelity or whoever, and
Yeah.
they can just pick out these index funds really simply.
Sounds good. All right. Well, what have we missed? What have we not talked about that you want to make sure
Yeah.
that we do?
The value of a written plan. So I wanted to make sure to share this one
Okay.
because this is honestly, I guess it's maybe a little exaggerative, but to say it saved my wife and I's marriage is something that could be thrown around, because I'm the finance guy. I love looking this sort of stuff up. I love diving into all the rabbit holes and figuring out all the different tips and tricks. And my wife found that stressful because I would come to her every few days and say, check out this great new idea. Let's invest in this crypto. Let's invest in this stock. Let's do this and that. And she was like, isn't what you just said a couple of days ago completely counter to this advice you're now saying we should do? And
Yeah.
our heads were spinning. It was several months of this where it's just stressful. And then I heard on a different podcast, someone mentioned the idea of a written investment plan. And I was like, here we go. Here's what I can do for you is I'm going to write all of this down. We're going to commit to a strategy together. We're going to write it all down. We're going to set a cadence that we'll review it together. We'll set a cadence where we can make changes. And honestly, that's what set me on the path of that simple investing. Is I never make changes to our plan once we wrote it down, because we've realized, hey, it's a sound plan. It's gotten us to where we are today. I think it's when people don't have things written down, like we've talked about with getting organized when you were on my podcast. If it's not written down
Yeah.
in some sort of a system, you forget things, you forget what you said previously, you don't know how you were planning on doing something. But if you write it all down, it's going to help you stay sane during those crazy market times. Like the last couple of years where things have gone way up or way down, I haven't worried about it because we had our plan built. It helps me and my wife stay aligned when it comes to our
Mhm.
financial plan. This written document is a great help because she knows where it is should something happen to me, because most people, there's one person who cares about the finances and the other that goes along with it. And then if the person that cares about it is to die or something happens, the other person like may not have a clue what to do. So my wife has this document that outlines our strategy, that she could get help from a financial planner or somebody that would understand what we've written down, and they could help her continue to carry out the plan. And it has all the phone numbers, the beneficiary information. It's kind of a really lightweight estate document, so to speak.
Uh,
But I think writing all that down has just helped me and my wife tremendously when it comes to staying on the same page and continuing forward without going crazy. about whatever's going on in the stock market.
Mhm. I bet there's going to be some conversations today
Yeah.
as people listen to that with, what if the worst happens? What if one of
Hmm.
us, um, it's just one less problem to have that it's all written down and,
Yeah.
and there's,
You have all this stuff set up, insurances, beneficiaries, but do you have it all like written down in one place? Even if you're not like so complicated that you need this big fancy trust and you have all these lawyers on your team and things like that, if you don't have that much of a need, you still need to know at least who to call when the bank account needs to be changed into your name, things like that. So just write all those sort of things down and it just takes so much stress off of both spouses.
oh, absolutely. And you talk about marriages. I mean, how
Hmm.
many marriages have ended because of
Hmm.
money problems? That
Hmm.
tends to be those that's right up there at the top. And of course, I know there's so many different ways that we could go with this conversation.
Hmm.
Where can people get more? Tell us about your
Yeah.
podcast, how often you publish, because I know people are going to be interested.
Yeah, it's called Money Talk with Skyler Fleming. I'll show it on camera here. Money Talk with Skyler Fleming. That's the website as well. You can find me anywhere you listen to podcasts, YouTube, social media. I'm happy to respond to anybody anywhere they reach out. So I'd love to chat with people. And even if someone's really interested in diving into their financial situation, I do financial coaching. I think it'd be awesome eventually to have some sort of a podcast episode where I do it like a series of coaching. So if someone's interested in maybe getting some questions answered, I would love to help them out. So yeah, Money Talk with Skyler Fleming is where you can find me.
Fantastic. And I know um, some of us are going to be watching the on YouTube. Others are going
Mhm.
to be hearing the audio over on Spotify. Others are actually going to be in the blog post, seeing one or the other.
Mhm.
So I'm going to have some things in the body of the blog post that accompanies this. So
Thank you.
frankbuck.org, and just go right to the post, and we'll have some good things that will hopefully save you money. So Skylar, again, it has been a real pleasure having you on today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is a ton of fun to talk about money.
And that's the interview. If you enjoyed this one, check out Skylar's other episodes and his social media presence. It's all in the body of the blog post. Hey, thanks for stopping by today. And if you like this content, there's plenty more that's just as nuts and bolts. This has been Frank Buck helping you get organized and make it look easy.